Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet, Pat Chat Edition. I'm Violet.
And I'm Pat.
These videos are based on some ideas and articles that Patrick has found online that we thought would be good for us to talk about because the education value that can come out of them we think would be really high. So, what are we doing? What are we talking about today?
This week, I thought it would be a good idea to discuss 10 of the most common keto myths that, at the beginning, especially at the beginning of our journeys, like our questions that we might ask ourselves. And I thought it would be a good idea to discuss them with you.
Okay, so where are we starting?
Okay, the first myth is, like, on keto, you eat high fat.
Okay. And so what's interesting about that is part of it is true. So when you start a ketogenic lifestyle, yes, you start off eating high fat. Why? And I say part of it is true because at the very beginning, you're going to lower your carb intake, which is your energy source. So obviously you need to raise your fat intake. And that was going to last for as long as it takes for you to become keto adapted. So for some people, that could be 4 days. For other people, that could be 2 weeks. It really depends on how quickly your body adjusts. I find most people are closer to the 4-day mark. But, everybody's different. And then once you're fat adapted, we each get into this place with ourselves where we find that eating that much fat, we don't need it. We just are satiated faster. And the reason that's happening is because, of course, your body starts taking fat from you.
But actually, how high is too high? Like, how many grams of fat? How do you calculate the number of fat you need?
Okay, so that's an interesting question too, because most food calculators most keto calculators that you're going to do is going to give you a number. And, first of all, I think that for most people, just knowing that the upper limit that I can eat is X is good to know just so I don't go over it. The funny thing is that not only are you most likely not going to go over it, the chance that you're going to reach it eventually becomes really difficult. So when you're saying what number, every person's calculation is going to be different. I can tell you that my calculation was about 170 grams of fat. So how often did I actually reach 170 grams of fat? Like if I go back in my chronometer, like almost never, because although I did eat the fat that came along with my meat, I didn't need to add fat anymore. So this is where I'm saying it depends. What's going to happen is that initially you're going to start off almost hitting the number or even hitting the number or even sometimes going past the number because we're taking that transition between carbs and fat, and your body is looking for a certain amount of energy that you're eating. But once your body stops looking for that, because once your body starts realizing, well, okay, there's dietary fat, and then there's we're carrying around this fat, and your body's smart. Like, it's not going to push you to eat something that it can pull from itself, right? So this is where our actual desire to eat the fat kind of goes down, right? Like my desire to add butter to stuff went down, or my desire to add extra olive oil to stuff went down. Do I still use olive oil? Yes, I do. Do I still use butter for cooking? Yes, I do. But I don't add extra, which, that went away. I wasn't hungry and I make it. And I'm sure you find the same thing.
Yeah, totally.
Right. What was the thing that you noticed that went away first? Like, what was your first notice?
I think for me it was probably like adding less cooking oil to stuff.
Okay. So, exactly. It happens, right? Okay. What's the next?
The next myth on keto, you eat high protein.
Okay. So it's again the same kind of idea. You're going to get a calculator that's going to tell you how much protein that you should eat. Do you even remember how much protein you were eating before you started keto? Like, do you know the number of grams of protein you were eating before you started keto?
No, I never actually measured it, but it was probably way too much.
So that's the part that
I
find...
go through a whole steak like that.
That's the part that I find funny. There's this idea that on keto you're going to eat too much protein, but yet when you double check what most people were eating before they started actually monitoring their food, chances are they're eating much more protein than when they start any program that lets them monitor their food. So this is the first thing I'm going to say is that you think you're eating a lot of protein on keto, chances are you were eating more before you started keto just because you weren't checking. So
on your diet, for example, like let's say out of a chicken, what's the amount of protein you should eat out of a chicken? Like a leg, two legs and a breast, a whole chicken, half a chicken.
Okay, actually, for myself, and this is something that, because I've always looked at this diet this way, I feel like I did a lot of research. So let's be clear. I did a lot of research before I even began this way of eating because I was skeptical that it was going to solve my hip problem. So I needed to be convinced. I'm not going to lie. So I didn't just jump in and say, yay, I'm going to be. No. What's important that I learned is that protein is a pivot. It's not an amount per se. What that means is that however much protein was healthy for you to eat before you started keto is the same amount of protein that's healthy for you to eat after you started keto. And that number is actually based on how much lean muscle mass you have. So again, I had the calculator that told me that I should theoretically be eating 90 grams of protein per day. To be honest, what I did is I just left my protein serving sizes to be identical to what they were before. So you're asking chicken. I used to eat a full chicken leg before. I continue to eat a full chicken leg throughout this process. I don't eat 2 chicken legs. I don't eat half a chicken leg. And when I say chicken leg, I mean the thigh and the drumstick. That's what I was eating before, and I've kept going forward. Same thing with pork, a pork chop, right? Of a certain, like a medium-sized pork chop. And I honestly can't even really tell you. Like, I mean, I was weighing them before, like, and I do sometimes still weigh them just to make sure I'm staying in the, like, I weigh everything. That's not true. I can't tell you. Hold on, let me think. 10 ounces. 10 ounces.
Let's say you're...
Now, 10 ounces is actually a good size pork chop, by the way. So I point that out.
Yeah.
But the thing I'm going to point out to everyone is that I eat 1 meal a day. So let's keep that in mind.
Yeah. Well, let's say you're on keto and you're a meat lover like me. I think I'm a meat lover. And you do like a big, like the big steak, a big 16 ounces steak. I don't know. Is there any, what's your advice? Like, is there any way to, or can we overdo like proteins on a keto? What's the effect of that?
Actually, so you can theoretically. So this is where it gets interesting. Because we still eat carbs, theoretically you can overdo protein because protein, if you eat too much of it, needs to be put away, and it's going to be put away into glycogen storages. Okay. So theoretically, if you eat too much protein, it gets turned into sugar.
Oh, okay.
So there is a reason to be moderate. What I would suggest, and this is just me having done so much research with so many things, if there's a day where you're looking at that steak and it's 18 ounce or 40 ounce or whatever the thing is that you want it, if you're looking at this gigantic steak and saying, I actually really want to eat the whole thing, just don't eat any carbs that day.
Okay.
Right? Just don't eat any carbs that day. A little bit of that's going to get put away as carbs because you didn't eat any carbs anyway. You'll be fine. Right? So you have, basically you have a carnivore day.
Okay.
Right? And that's fine. Like, I think it's important for us to, when you're looking at what you're doing, to look at it globally and also look at it. So looking at it for the day, not just the meal, right? Because that's where we can get tripped up too. Okay. If I have a 20 ounce steak, so I say, I'm not going to have any carbs with this meal, but I need to look at my whole day. That 20 ounce steak, part of that's getting converted to carbs very likely. So if I still had carbs earlier in my day,
okay,
right? So I need to plan my day a bit better when I know I'm going to have something like that.
Okay. So me and your viewers, we all know that you started your keto journey to lose weight. Was your first, your main motive? That's the certain it. So you do keto to lose weight.
So, okay, that is a myth that keto is a weight loss diet or a fat loss diet. So the reason that I would say that that's a myth is because although you will likely lose fat on keto, that's not the only reason that someone would do keto. And it's not the reason that I began keto, right? So, for example,
really?
Lowering your carbohydrates to keto numbers can solve inflammation issues, which was my reason. But it can also solve diabetes problems. It can also solve insulin resistance problems. It can also help with Alzheimer's. It can add cognitive clarity. There's a lot of research now that's starting to show that it can help you be heart healthy. So there's too many positives to say that keto is all about weight loss.
It's all about weight loss, yeah.
Did you have any metabolic issues that started you, or did you start for weight loss? Like, what was your reason? Like, if I don't know, but go ahead and tell them.
No, I think I started like weight loss for sure was a good bonus, but like it mostly started because I was getting into a blood pressure problem. So it was like those kind of issues that
You're
actually
so not
welcome.
telling.
What?
You started for weight loss. Get out.
I did start for weight loss, but I knew like the weight loss problem was causing other problems. So
Was
so for
causing
sure,
the
it was
blood pressure
causing
problem.
the blood pressure
Yeah.
and like in a year my blood pressure went back. It's not to normal, so a
But it's
little bit
close.
on, but it's close to normal, really close to normal. And I was fearing also like a diabetes issue. I was like I think
Okay.
on the edge of. So I never actually got checked for that, but like yeah, I did like some proactive steps like before I went to the doctor and got on medication. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we both would agree that we were both kind of worried about diabetes. Many people in my family have diabetes, so it wasn't necessarily that I felt I was in the position yet to be diabetic, but I was looking at my parents, my grandparents. I was worried.
Okay. Oh, Violet, what do you think about my cheat meals? I have at least like 2 cheat meals per week. One like poutine, and the other one are burgers and fries. And
People are going to think that you just don't follow keto.
no, it's a joke. Fourth myth, like cheat meals.
Cheat meals. Okay. So, first of all, I think when the ketogenic diet first came out, because there was this reference where it was being used for diabetes. I'm sorry, it was being used for epilepsy, and those people were having such poor quality oils in their food. So those children, I should say, I feel like people in the initially doing the ketogenic diet felt like they needed to balance things out because of the type of oils that they were using. I think if you fast forward to today, where almost everyone doing a ketogenic lifestyle knows that we should be using the best quality oils we possibly can use and the best quality meats and the best quality veg that we could possibly use. Well, at that point, then the need for cheat meals, because that would be, on one hand, it was reintroducing carbs because they felt carbs was a healthier energy source. Well, now that we've arranged it so that we're using olive oil, coconut oil, avocado oil, like all these really well, basically all these very healthy oils, then the need to use carbs as a supplement, so a healthier supplement too, is not there. That's part one. The part two part of it is that people like to eat certain things. Cheat meals, in my opinion, are not about refeeding. I honestly feel like cheat meals are about satisfying our sweet tooth and satisfying our desire to eat junk food. And I feel like doctors, so now I'm bringing doctors into this because I think that that's where this came from. This idea that, well, if you eat a well-balanced diet, then there's no reason that once in a while you shouldn't be able to have X food. And the problem that I see there is that's like saying, well, if you haven't drank alcohol for like a long time, then it's okay for you to drink alcohol when you're addicted to the alcohol. We need to be honest with ourselves that we are addicted to carbs. So when I allow myself to have some carbs in there, how many days do I struggle after that to stay on track? And then what's going to happen? I'm going to fight my way back to being on track. I'm going to feel good again. I'm going to feel balanced. And then a few weeks later, I'm going to do that again to myself. You need to understand that cheat, part of this, that, cheat meal, cheat, it's a cheat. You're cheating yourself, though. That's the problem. I don't like to cheat myself. I like to do very good things for myself. I like to take care of myself really, really well. And so, I feel like that's part of being a wellness warrior, that my health comes before everything else. And so, even when there's a celebration, I'm always trying to figure out, like, where does the celebratory food that I might decide to eat fit into the overall day? And I try to keep myself on course because, and maybe it's just me, but when I overeat carbs, my body tells me. Now, you might not be that way. That's okay. But you need to understand something. There's always a repercussion. If you overeat carbs and you don't have a physical negative reaction like I do, you're still going to have we're putting carbs into weight, into fat reaction that happens in every body.
Okay.
Right? So you
McDonald's.
might see the scale going up and be like, what's happening?
Right.
But that cheat meal matters, and it's gonna go somewhere.
So McDonald's once a week, not a good idea.
It's a horrible idea, actually.
Okay, let's go with the fifth myth. The type of fat you eat doesn't matter. So any kind of oil, any kind of fat will be good on keto.
I think I kind of touched on that a few seconds ago,
Oh,
but
but yeah.
what do you think about that one?
I don't know, like probably not. Like for sure, I try like you to at least to stick with the best oil. So coconut oil. Although like there's a bunch of research that say coconut oil. Like I've seen like an article like not so long ago about saying that coconut oil was not good for your health. But coconut oil, olive oil, for sure, I try to stick with the good oils and ditch the vegetable oils and the good ones. But do I know the reasons? Because you told me.
Well, what's interesting to me there is that article that says that coconut oil is not good for your health, but coconuts are good for your health, right? Coconuts are a nut, and they're encouraged by nutritionists to eat, but yet coconut oil is bad for you. And the question that I had there is, well, if the oil is not good, why is the actual nut okay? Right? And I feel like sometimes we have to be careful that people who have ulterior motives put out articles that kind of push us in. That's why we do these videos, right? They push us in the wrong direction because they're trying to scare us and get us to do things that will cause us then to have to buy their diet products.
Yeah. So we stick to coconut oil, olive oil, avocado oil.
And there might be
Which one
other
do you-
healthy oils out there. I mean, I'm not going to say that I know them all. What's interesting to me is that coconut oil, avocado oil, and olive oil taste good to me.
Yeah.
So I'm happy to use them. But there might be other oils, depending on what part of the country you're in or the part of the world you're in. There might be other healthy oils that I'm not listing right now. I think the most important part of all of this is being able to recognize that whatever I choose to eat should taste good to me. That's what's going to help me to eat it repeatedly, right? We don't eat things that taste bad to us. We avoid it.
Yeah. This next one is going to be interesting to all the athletes out there that they don't go keto because they think they need the carbs. So one myth is that you will lose muscle on keto.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about that?
Well, see, okay, you're right, because a lot of athletes will be like, oh my God, I
no,
can...
keto, I need the carbs. And
Yeah, funny enough, what helps us to build muscle? Protein.
Yeah.
And what do we pivot on in keto? Protein. So actually, as long as you're eating the right amount of protein, then carbohydrates are just an energy source. It's what fuels your body to be able to use the protein you're eating to build the muscle. But guess what? So are fats, an energy source. So your body's still going to be able to fuel itself to build the muscle that you're trying to build.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily... Sorry.
No, okay. I just wanted to say that not so long ago I saw a YouTube video about Arnold Schwarzenegger's past, like as a bodybuilder, and in the 70s, like I think it was in the 70s, I might stand corrected if I'm not right, but the guys were eating steak and eggs. They were eating like ridiculous amounts of protein. They didn't have carbs, they didn't have pasta, they didn't have bread, like.
Oh, their meals were
Like
just steak
their
and eggs?
meals were like mostly a little bit of vegetables. So basically, they were eating keto.
They were eating a ketogenic lifestyle.
They were,
Maybe even a
eating
carnivore lifestyle on some level.
because
on some
for
days.
sure, like they didn't have as much fat as we do, but like they had like.
Well, if you're eating all steak, if you're eating
yeah,
all pork, if you're eating, you're actually
you're
going to
right.
have a good amount of fat. Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
Because that's another thing that I want to say, going back to the amount of fat that you need to eat. A lot of people believe that you need to add extra fat, and that's not keto. It's like you add extra fat in one scenario that I can really think about where you would always add extra fat, and that's if you're trying to stay stable on your weight and you're trying to make sure that you don't keep losing, which is my story right now. So I do add a little bit extra fat, but like it's not excessive either. Like I'm still not anywhere near my 160, 70. I don't even reach there, right? Even with the fact that I add a little extra fat. So it's not a high fat diet. And I really get annoyed when people say it is. It really isn't.
Yeah. So guys, you can't go to the gym. You can't exercise on keto. There's no problem with that. And what about like if you're more into exercise than weightlifting, like more like cardio? So
Okay. So exercise on keto. That's another myth that says that if you exercise, you're not going to have, if you do keto, you're not going to have the energy to exercise. And actually, there's nothing, first of all, there's no research that shows that, because the ketogenic lifestyle is about switching energy sources. And basically, if we take cars as a good example, Teslas drive pretty damn fast, right? And they're running on electricity, right? So you don't need a gas-based car to go fast. And it's the same thing with us. Like if you're running your body on carbs, sure, you're gonna have a certain amount of energy. If you're running your body on fats, you're gonna have a certain amount of energy. And the amount of energy that you do use is gonna really depend on you.
Yeah, and I've seen a bunch of articles also that like many athletes that are doing long distance running, for example, are they do better on keto. They're able to tap in their energy sources like longer than if they were fueled by carbs.
Well, the interesting thing there is that if I'm being fueled by fat and I go for a long distance run, I have 2,000 calories worth of glucose on my body. So if I'm being fueled by carbs, once I go through those 200 grams of carbs, my body is going to start to try to use the ketones, but it's not used to it. So it's going to be a bit of a struggle, right? It's going to tap into it. It's not going to let you completely, right? But that's where you see that some athletes hit that wall because they're not able to tap their ketones enough to really push through. But if you're already being fueled by ketones, when you're doing your run, your body is actually leaning more on the ketones than on the carbs, from what I understood from a few people I've seen talk about this. Your body's going to go back and forth. It's going to use some ketones. It's going to use some glycogen. And so actually you can run farther and have an easier time of it. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's energy. Do you have the energy or not? We have weeks worth of fat on us to use, even when we are at our ideal weight. And people ignore that piece of information because they think that we need carbs and it has to be fast energy. Again, you need to know what you're aiming at and you need to know where the energy is coming from. Ketones are a very good source of energy for long distance endurance type of activities.
Yeah. Next one is Miss Michael's favorite. Ketosis is a state of emergency. That's not sustainable. It's only state of emergency.
Okay.
And it's not sustainable.
I feel like the funny thing here is that she said that she made that statement, and everybody focused in on the ketosis part of it and said like she doesn't understand what she's talking about. And it's true. I don't think she was using the right word. I think she meant to be talking about ketoacidosis, because that actually is a state of emergency. Ketoacidosis is when your body is producing ketones, which your body does do, but you're a type 1 diabetic. And so insulin is not being produced. Insulin tells your body to stop producing ketones because there are carbs available. I don't have that ability to moderate when I start producing ketones. When I stop producing ketones. So what happens in a type 1 diabetic, because they don't have insulin, they are not able to use the glucose that's floating around in their body. So it's there, but not usable. But at the same time, because there's no insulin, their body is not being told, hey, stop producing ketones. So now my body becomes too acidic and I will pass. We have to be careful. Too many carbs in our blood, dangerous, poisonous. Too many ketones in our blood, dangerous, poisonous. But here's the thing. Can the average everyday person, like can you and I, end up with ketoacidosis? Maybe if we are ingesting exogenous ketones at a crazy rate, we could do that to ourselves. But normally no, because in the course of a day, your body and my body will, even if, let's say we did carnivore for a month, we would still produce glucose for the parts of our brain and the few blood cells, I believe it is, that don't use ketones. So we would produce it. So then what would happen? We would still have insulin responses happening. Okay. And so our ketone production would stop, start. Right? So a typical person like you and me, like we'd have to work hard to have ketoacidosis. So when we hear the term ketosis is a state of emergency, I honestly believe that that's a mistake that the person meant to say. I think Ms. Michaels meant to say ketoacidosis is a state of emergency. With that statement, I would totally agree. But that's not what people who do keto are in. We're in a state of ketosis.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
a long explanation.
Yeah, that was interesting. Okay, next myth. Keto flu. Oh, let's talk about keto flu. That supposedly for like I even saw that in some articles that it lasts really long, like for a month, for example.
Okay.
So yeah. What about keto flu? Is this something that could discourage people to go keto, for example? Or what is actually keto flu?
My experience of keto flu, had I known about it beforehand, might have discouraged me a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It was a pretty tough transition for me. Should it discourage us from doing keto though? I mean, honestly, I feel like the way my hip was feeling, 5 days, no, it wasn't even 5 days. It lasted 2 days. But even if it would have been, if someone would have told me, well, you have to go through that for a week to fix your hip, I would have done it. Would I have done it for months? But there's a question mark for me of why it would last months. So that's a whole other point. But let's start off with the keto flu is basically when your body is transitioning from carb burning to fat burning, letting go of the use of carbs, because at that point you've reduced your carbohydrate intake significantly, 20 grams or less, right? Your brain is looking for carbs. We are addicted to carbs. So let's be clear. I love the lovely cutesy keto flu that they call it, but it's actually carb withdrawal, right? You're going through an addictive withdrawal symptom. You know, when you have the shakes, when you have flu-like symptoms, when you're nauseous, when you are like frantic to eat carbs, you were addicted to carbs. And I feel like it's cute to call it the flu, but then I guess when people are detoxing from alcohol, we should call it, the alcohol flu. Or when they're getting off cocaine, we should say the cocaine flu. No, we say that they're going through withdrawal symptoms from cocaine and alcohol. Why are we making it pretty for keto? I don't know. It's a withdrawal symptom.
Okay.
Now, does it last for months? Well, here's the thing. When we call it the keto flu and make it sound cutesy, then the people who are going through it don't necessarily know that the reason they're going through it is their body is withdrawing from carbohydrates. So what am I likely to do in those scenarios? Because my brain is saying, eat some carbs, eat some carbs, eat some carbs. And if I don't make the link, I might eat some carbs. And so what's going to happen? I'm going to be in this loop of keto flu for a very long. If I persist in trying to do keto, I'm going to keep experiencing it over and over. I'm going to eat some carbs and think alcoholic, right? They get off, or they don't drink for 4 days and they start to feel better, and then something goes wrong in their life and they have a drink, and then they have to go through that again right? So I think the thing that I would want people to do is, let's stop pretending it's a keto flu and call it what it is. When you go through carb withdrawal while you're doing keto, it can last a few days, and it's uncomfortable and it's painful for some people. I'm talking about myself. But it was worth it, right? Because once I got through it, first of all, I was clear to myself, Violet, you're not doing that to yourself again. So I did not go back to eating carbs. Go back a few and see cheat meal, never did it. Because I wasn't going to experience that again.
And as a matter of fact, like you went really from day one, you went with your 20 grams of carbs.
Yes.
So you were really strict and fast. I can say I went through a keto flu because my progression to keto was very progressive, actually. If you remember, I cut out every dessert, every added sugar first, then I went to pasta and rice. So that's another way to maybe mitigate that keto flu thing, is to go to get rid of your carbs a little bit more progressively over maybe a few weeks.
Sure, that's like the person who slowly uses Nicorette to get off of smoking, right? They have fewer symptoms because slowly they cut it down. And you're for sure that's another way to do it. And it can go either way. I feel like I don't know if I had done it that way, so myself. I don't know if I would have tried to do it your way if I would have been successful, only because you had me backing you up versus I wouldn't have had you backing me because I did it first. And so every time you kind of let something in, I don't know if I would have been able to stay with it and say, oh, I can do this, versus just knowing this is the end. I'm not eating those things anymore, for me helped because I didn't have anybody backing me up. As a matter of fact, you thought I was kind of nuts when I started. So I didn't have your support at the very beginning, right? So I feel like that makes a big difference too. Like by the time you started doing it, I was just happy you were doing something,
Yeah.
and I was pushing you. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Right. So, I think your situation is going to matter, and I think you need to know your personality, because it's also about personality. I think again, like for me to slowly taper something, I would have gotten bored.
Yeah.
That's the other part. I
But-
think I would have gotten bored too.
But truth of the matter is, like, if you get rid of just the added sugar first, I think that's what's really like holding you on to that lifestyle. The rest like kind of follow up easily. Like getting rid of the rice wasn't an issue. Getting rid of the pasta wasn't an issue. The last
For
thing
you.
that for me, the last thing that I was kind of holding on to was bread, because I did like bread, and not like the white bread like with like flour, and
Can I
it
just-
was more.
Can I insert? I was holding on to beer because I do like beer. Alcoholic talk.
Beer?
I'm just saying, like
No.
you're saying, I did like bread because I
And beer.
held on to bread because I like bread.
No, yeah,
that's,
but-
that's just the talk of an addict, right? Like we give a reason why we're still doing something, but the truth is because I can't let it go.
Yeah, I ended up. Okay, what's your point? What's your point? Tu coupes ça au montage. Oh, so bread was the last thing that I did let go, because I was still like buying. I was trying though to find, and I did find some bread that had, for example, like one slice had around 10 grams of carbs. So it was a really fluffy light bread, but at some point I was buying it, like leaving it in the fridge, and it was getting bad like after a few days, because I was having one slice once in a while, and then what like really like got me to jump into the keto lifestyle is letting go of the bread. But it took like maybe a month, like getting rid of all of everything like progressively. So if you really don't want to go through keto flow, just like go a little bit more progressively.
It doesn't
I guess.
necessarily mean
So-
that they might not still have that symptom though. I mean, like
Oh, yeah,
going
for
progressively
sure,
doesn't
for
necessarily
sure.
mean you're not going to
Yeah.
still have the symptoms, but it's definitely more chance you'll have less symptoms for sure.
Okay.
And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that for every person, like you're just now you're talking about the idea that I tried to find replacements or lower versions of whatever. And I feel like the thing that I try to help people to think about is that when I'm trying to change my life, but I'm still trying to hold on to things from my history, am I really changing my life? Right? So, and this is for everything. If I don't like the job that I do, then I have to look at changing careers, not just finding a different place to do the same job. If I don't like the job, I'm just going to be in a new environment, but I'm still going to hate the job, right? So I think on some level we need to allow ourselves to recognize that it's also about being honest with myself. Is this healthy for me? Yes or no? You know, I go from a 15-gram slice of bread to a 10-gram slice of bread, but that's still half of the amount of carbs I'm supposed to eat in my entire day. Is this really what I want to put my food, my 10 grams on, right? And that's the bigger question.
Yeah. And I still do love beer, by the way, but I replaced it. No, but I replaced it with a glass of wine once in a while. Like you can find like less carby drinks. It's still alcohol, that's for sure. But like, and you need to be
alcohol is not the
reasonable.
issue.
But like,
Yeah, the alcohol is not necessarily the issue, because if you would have had a glass of beer on a day you did carnivore,
yeah,
right? You'd only have to deal with the carbs in the alcohol in the beer. But the thing is that the alcohol delays your cleanup of the carbs that you've ingested. That's what's more dangerous.
Okay.
If I drink a glass of beer or even a glass of wine, which is very low carb, on a day that I've had 15 grams, 20 grams, even let's go over and say 50 grams of carbs, those 15 grams of carbs are circulating in my blood the entire time that my body is dealing with the alcohol. It does the most toxic thing first. Alcohol is more toxic than carbs.
okay.
So that's where people should be careful. It's not about the alcohol per se. Although if I'm fasting, why would I do that? But if I was fasting, for example, having that little glass of wine, you know,
yeah.
like, but I'm just saying, like, you need to be more conscious of why. This goes back to what I said a while back. Know what food affects me how. The alcohol is delaying the processing of the sugar. That's why it's a problem.
Okay.
And
Okay.
actually, beer is
Yeah, beer
carby.
is hard. Yeah,
It's carby.
It's hard.
But a glass of wine, or even a harder one like vodka, or like you have much less. You don't have any carbs to deal with. You're just dealing with the alcohol.
Yeah. True.
Why are we on this topic? Okay.
Because we like to drink. Last one. Okay, yeah, that's an interesting one too. You on keto, you're tired all the time.
Like lacking energy.
lacking energy, having to nap. Like I was having to nap when I was on the standard American diet.
I was just thinking the same thing. You nap more when you're on the standard American diet than you
Yeah.
do now. Okay, so does that answer the question?
I think so. Honestly, like if I might say, yeah, before I started keto, for sure my like nights are short. Maybe I have between 6 and 7, 8 hours of sleep per night, and having like after lunch that was crazy. Like at work I was like nodding off like in meetings. After supper I had to nap for an hour. Since I'm doing keto, like I have way more energy. Like I don't like my days even more if I don't have lunch at work. I'm way more energetic for my afternoons than before. So
Actually, what you just touched on is more about intermittent fasting. Like when you skip a meal, your body does give you energy to go get some food because it thinks you need to go hunt. So that's part of more to do with intermittent fasting. But I think that what you're talking about is very valid, though. I feel like most people who do keto have more energy because we need to think about the energy source. So if you think about the idea of a gigantic log versus a twig, carbs are like a twig. When you set that on fire, it's like poosh, and it's gone, right? So you get this great big burst of energy, but then it doesn't last very long. Versus when you set that log on fire, it's harder to get it burning, but once you have that thing burning, hours there. And I feel like keto is like that because you have so much onboard energy. You don't have the that happens because when you eat carbs, you have a spike of energy. And you have like, the dopamine hit and everything that makes you feel like happy and da-da-da-da. And then as it comes down, you lose energy and your brain is like, get more carbs. So you feel like a little bit like not great. Versus when you have any keto meal that's involving a little bit of some kind of good oil or just even a good amount of protein and whatever. Like when you eat a normal keto meal, like your energy doesn't change. It's just sustained because there isn't a hit that happens, right? You have fat to burn. And you just keep burning fat. And it's kind of like you're kind of just putting a new log on top. But it's just there's another log. And it just keeps burning through slowly. So I feel like that's why. I feel there's a belief that you're going to have less energy because you don't have the carb hit. Versus I think if you talk to people who are keto, what you find out is that their energy is just even. It's steady. And that's what you're talking about. You get up in the morning and you do your day and you don't have to take a nap. And I mean, I was never a napper when I was on carbs, but I can definitely say, that I still have energy. Like I didn't lose energy, but I made that transition, right? Yeah. I took one out, put the other one in, and I kept going forward. So that was number 10.
Yeah, I think we ran out of myth. If you guys have like more myths that you heard of and you want us to discuss, like leave them in the comments below.
Absolutely, that would be a great idea. If there's more myths that you guys know about, we'll definitely tackle them. So this was fun.
Oh yeah, totally.
I want to thank you for watching Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet Pat Chat Edition. If you guys are not subscribed, if you're not already a wellness warrior, please click the subscribe button, become a wellness warrior. We love talking to you guys. We're going to try to do more of these. And of course, I'm going to be back on Monday with another video.
And I might be back on Thursday.
Thank you for watching Mind Blowing Health and Wellness with Violet.
And Pat.
I'll talk to you in the next video. Well, we will talk to you in the next video.
Bye.